African Voice: Why a UNWTO Secretary General must not stand for a third term. Tourism consultant and analyst Emmanuel Frimpong is the president of Africa Tourism Research Network and calls for UN Tourism Secretary General Zurab Pololikashvili to call it quit. The United Nations World Tourism Organization, UNWTO, now UN Tourism, is a specialized agency of the United Nations responsible for promoting sustainable and universally accessible tourism. The Secretary General of UNWTO has traditionally served a maximum of 2 terms, ensuring leadership rotation and fresh perspectives. However, current Secretary General Mr. Zurab Pololikashvili is currently seeking a third term, raising significant concerns within the global tourism community. As I think deeply about this act by the current SG, I have come to a conclusion this would be unethical, unfair, and a bad precedent for the organization. Ethical concerns. Violating institutional norms and democratic principles. The UNWTO, like many international organizations, has maintained a precedent of limiting its Secretary General's tenure to 2 terms. This aligns with broader UN practices, evidenced in the UN Secretary General rarely seeking more than 2 terms. Extending tenure beyond the established norms undermines the democratic principles of leadership rotation and transparency, creating a dangerous precedent for future leaders. iturbonus.com. Additionally, changing rules to allow a third term while in office under the cover of an unratified lacuna raises serious ethical concerns about self-interest and manipulation of governance structures. This move could be perceived as an attempt to cling to power rather than prioritize the organization's best interests. Unfairness. Allegations of electoral manipulation and governance issues. Mr. Pololikashvili's previous elections have been marred by allegations of irregularities, with reports suggesting that the electoral process was manipulated to disadvantage other candidates. For example, in the 2021 election, voting was scheduled during Spain's national lockdown, limiting the ability of competitors to campaign effectively. There have also been allegations and concerns about favoritism, lack of transparency, and undue influence over the electoral process. Allowing an incumbent to alter the rules to extend their leadership makes the playing field unfair. This discourages other qualified candidates from running and diminishes the credibility of UNWTO's, UN Tourism's, leadership selection process. Fair elections and leadership turnover are essential to maintaining institutional legitimacy. A bad idea. Resistance from key member states and declining trust. Spain, the host country of the UNWTO headquarters, has publicly opposed Pololikashvili's bid for a third term. This opposition reflects broader dissatisfaction among member states and stakeholders regarding his leadership. A leader who lacks broad international support cannot effectively drive the global tourism agenda. If major stakeholders, including host nations, dissent, it indicates a significant loss of confidence in his administration. A personal observation of the body languages of most tourism leaders at ITB Berlin 2025 showed a clear unhappiness for the decision of the SG to run for a third term. Extending an individual's leadership beyond the standard limit undermines institutional trust. The global tourism sector requires stable, unbiased, and competent leadership representative of all member states. Allowing a third term could weaken the organization's credibility and discourage other nations from fully engaging in its mission. Lack of progress on key tourism challenges. Under Mr. Pololikashvili's leadership, UNWTO has faced criticism for handling major global tourism challenges. During the COVID-19 pandemic, the organization was chastised for being slow to provide cohesive, actionable strategies to assist struggling nations in reviving their tourism sectors. Additionally, critics argue that his tenure has focused more on personal political maneuvers rather than advancing the UNWTO's core mission of promoting sustainable tourism. If a leader cannot demonstrate significant progress on key issues within 2 terms, extending their mandate is unlikely to yield different results. Leadership change is essential to introducing new ideas, perspectives, and solutions to pressing global tourism concerns. Risk of power consolidation and weakened accountability. Extending a leader's term beyond established limits raises concerns about power consolidation. International organizations thrive on leadership rotation, ensuring fresh perspectives and preventing the entrenchment of power. Allowing Mr. Pololikashvili a third term could weaken internal democratic processes, discourage qualified new candidates from stepping forward, and erode accountability within the UNWTO. Leaders who remain in power too long often develop networks of influence that reduce transparency and accountability. The longer a leader stays in power, the more difficult it becomes to challenge their authority, leading to governance issues that could hinder the organization's effectiveness. Conclusion: the UNWTO/UN tourism must prioritize transparency, accountability, and adherence to democratic norms. Permitting Mr. Zurab Pololikashvili to seek a third term would not only be unethical and unfair but also a bad precedent for the organization's long-term credibility. Member states should reinforce the two-term limit to uphold the integrity of UNWTO leadership, ensure fair governance, and maintain the trust of the global tourism community. Leadership change is crucial for innovation, fairness, and the organization's sustainable growth. It is my hope that Mr. Zurab Pololikashvili will reconsider his decision to run a third term but be a statesman to support the organization. Africa Tourism Research Network, Tourism and Hospitality Explore. The Africa Tourism Research Network, ATRN, dedicated to advancing tourism and hospitality through research, skills development, and business development. Join us in transforming Africa's tourism landscape for a sustainable future.